Good morning. It says this, hey, now this is on the air. Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday. Jesus, the end of April already. Can you believe that? There's not very many shopping days left till Christmas. Anyhow, where's this year going to? It's Dream with Len, and we're starting into part 2 of the power of intention this morning. I'm going to, once again, in trying to put this webinar series together, I can't seem to cram this stuff into neat half-hour packages, so we're going to probably run a little bit long today. I apologize for that. I'm trying to do what I said I would do in the beginning, which was keep it to a half hour, but the material doesn't fit nicely into half-hour little buckets. And you know, my options are to talk fast, in which case you probably won't get very much out of it because I'll be talking so fast about topics that are so complicated that you won't understand a word I said, or slow down and try to give the material justice. This is deep stuff. And I think we have a couple people on here that may not have been on last week. And I'm going to go back and review a little bit of what we did last week. And then we'll just keep going from there. For those of you who are new to some of these concepts, you got to go review the material. You got to look at it more than once. And it's not just looking at what I do, although that's a good place to begin, is to go back. Hello, Bob, is to go back and look. But also going back to the source, to Wayne Dyer and to other people that talk about this stuff. So anyhow, let me go to screen share. And before I do that, let me just say hi to everybody. Hello, Mike and Bob and Christy and Craig. Really glad to have you here, Rick. Roseanne said she was going to not make it because her husband is dragging her out of the house, kicking and screaming. And Chris Schaus is on another webinar this morning, or a training, so she can't be here. So some of our normal people are missing. But let's just get started. The more I sit here and talk, the later we're going to run. So let me go share the screen, present to everyone. I'm going to assume everybody can see the screen, and I'm going to turn on the PowerPoint. And here we go. So the power of intention, part 2. And what I promised you last week was we're going to ask the question, what does intention look like? And we're going to talk about the faces of intention. And this is really asking, what does source look like? And before I go any further, I had a conversation earlier this week with Bob, actually. And I keep using the word source in this presentation. And of course, I think we all understand that source is the same as God. Source means God, it means infinite energy, it means the energy of the universe, it means whatever you want it to mean. The reason I'm using the word source, the reason I'm using the word source is we're following to a great extent, not totally 100%, but we're following to a great extent Wayne Dyer's presentation. And in this context, he used the word source quite a bit. So we all hopefully understand that what we call it doesn't change its characteristics. Is like I said before last week, and I've said it in other times, you can't get wet from the word water. You have to jump in the river to get wet. And the same is true here. Whatever we call it, source, God, universe, infinite energy, whatever we call it, we have to connect to it in order to experience it. And that's what we're talking about, is how to make that connection. I'm going to review a little bit about last week. We looked last week at our sensory perceptions, and we decided that our senses don't tell us what's real or what's out there. For example, when we put up as an example the visuals, the spectrum, the so-called electromagnetic spectrum, which is multiplied 10 by itself 15 times, 10 times, 10 times, 10 times, 10 times, 10 by 15. It's a huge number. I don't know what it is. I can figure it out. It doesn't matter. It's a huge number. The spectrum's that big. And the little bit of it that we see when we look with our eyes is less than a factor of 2 in there. It's almost infinitesimally small. We see a minuscule little bit of what's out there in the electromagnetic spectrum. And the spectrum ranges all the way from very long waves to very short waves. It goes from the beginning, very long, through television, through radio, through infrared, through thermal, to visible, to X-rays, to gamma rays, We see a teeny tiny fraction. So when we look out at the universe with our eyes, we can't see what's there. And in fact, Max Planck, who was a physicist who won the Nobel Prize, we quoted Max Planck. And the significant thing in this quote is there is no matter as such. When we look at matter, what appears to be matter, it's really empty space. It's just energy vibrating at a low frequency that gives us the appearance of structure, the appearance of something solid, but it's not solid. When we dig down into everything, including you, we find out that there's not much there. It's mostly empty space, which is pretty amazing. I know we all want to think of ourselves as a solid object, but we're not. We're really not. So Max Planck made the comment that we must assume behind this force, the force that holds solar systems and molecules or atoms together, the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. And this mind, this is God. This is where you came from. And we found that a little bit later on last week, because we looked at where do you come from? And we dug down deep into our structure, our physical structure, and we asked ourselves, where do I come from? What is the origin of my physical body? And the answer is, there's nothing there. The deeper we go, and we used to think that atoms were the building block of matter, but atoms are empty space. The deeper we dig, the less we find. And the funny part, the interesting thing about this is that when we look out the window at night and we see the stars, or we wind up our microscope and we look at atoms, it all looks the same. An atom looks like a little solar system, a nucleus and some planets running around it called electrons. And when we dig into the pieces, we find they're pretty empty. And when we look out at the solar system, we see the same thing. And then we find out that the solar system is part of the galaxy, which we call the Milky Way, and there's billions of them out there. And then we go deeper into the universe and we find that there's billions of galaxies, but they all look the same. They're all mostly empty space. So the question is, where did we come from? And Einstein told us years ago that there's a mass energy equivalent, that mass can be converted to energy. And we learned in high school, if you can remember high school, you may remember learning that mass is neither created nor destroyed. It's whatever it is there. But Einstein told us there was an equivalence, and that's what we're saying. We're saying that there's a mass energy equivalent, and the things that appear to be matter really come from energy. There's nothing there. There is no source for matter. For right now, let's just call it that. Moving on. So the alternative view here was intention isn't necessarily something you do, it's something you connect to. And in order to connect to intention, we have to surrender. We got to let go. We got to learn to connect to our higher self. We have to get rid of our ego, is really what it amounts to. And I don't want to spend a lot of time here because I want to move into the sort of the continuation of this in today. But for those of you who weren't here last week, if some of these concepts are a little bit foreign, all I can say is go back and watch last week. Go back and watch the replay where we dig into this a little bit more deeply and we develop the basis for it. So we had one other quote that we put up from Carlos Castaneda, who was a metaphysicist and an anthropologist. And the important thing here is that Absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attached to intent by a connecting link. And again, I want to remind you, in this sentence, I'm not reading the whole thing, but in this paragraph, in this quote, the word sorcerers doesn't mean the witches and warlocks of folklore. It's someone who studies the source. Wayne Dyer would have been considered a sorcerer in that sentence, somebody who studies and lives by the source. And the comment was made that most of us have tarnished our connecting link to the source. We're especially concerned with cleansing the connecting link of the numbing effects brought about by all the concerns of living at ordinary levels of consciousness. We've disconnected. Concerns like, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too fat, I'm afraid, what do the neighbors think? All those concerns are the things that tarnish our connection and make it hard for us to get what we want. So the conclusion was everything was intended here, including you. Everything emanates from the source. The source is that which intends everything into the material world. There is no material source for the material world. It comes from energy. And the source, or this field, or the field of intention, does everything. It beats your heart, it grows your fingernails, it animates all of life, and we're all connected to it. And if you truly understood this source, and that's what we're going to be looking at more today, if you truly understood that there's something available to you that's responsible for everything, it would make your life so much easier. So don't look for solutions inside it. Don't look for solutions to your problems outside yourself. We got to look inside ourselves and ask ourselves what is making it difficult for us to make the connection that we want to make and to get the things we want to get. So the real question is, how rusty is your connection to source? How damaged is it? So the summary from week 1 is our senses can't be trusted. There is no matter as such. No matter what our eyeballs try to trick us into believing, it's all mostly empty space. It's energy moving at different frequencies. But there is a conscious and intelligent mind that is emanating everything. We come from no thing. There is no material source that we can find, that we can trace ourselves to. We emanated from source, from God, from energy that intended everything into the material world. And our success in this material world depends on our connection to this source. And our connection is damaged by our concerns from living at lower levels of consciousness. I gave you an even deeper thought to ponder last week and a video to go watch if you wanted to think about this a little bit more. And this one is very difficult to wrap your mind around. But once again, all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. And the deeper thought is that we are only one consciousness experiencing itself. We are, each and every one of us is connected to everything out there. It's all one thing. And I know that this is very difficult to wrap your mind around. This is very difficult for me to wrap my mind around, and I'm thinking about it. But there is good reason to believe that life is a dream. We're looking out at the window, just the same. And I said this last week. If we sit in a movie theater and we watch a movie, we're watching the Titanic sink, and we want to run up on the stage and help some of the people into the lifeboats, and it looks real. Let's pretend we're in a big IMAX theater with 3D. It looks real. But when we get on the stage, there's nothing there. It was all an illusion. When you look out your window at the universe, ponder that one. So here we go, week 2. How do we cleanse our connection to source? How do we ease our way to get what we want? What does source really look like? What are the dominant characteristics that enable us to have a clean connection? What are the obstacles? And how do we get to feeling good? This is where we're going to go. So I threw in a quote here from Prince. There's been so much focus on Prince in the last couple of weeks, and rest in peace, Prince. He had some incredible music, but I think Prince understood this. Once you can clean out the cobwebs, so to speak, then you're going to be able to see things more clearly. He's really saying the same thing we're saying, that our connection to source is damaged, it's tarnished, and we got to clean it up. So the first thing you got to do is you got to suspend disbelief. If you think this is all hogwash, if this is rubbish, if this is like, oh my God, he's gone off the deep end now, then it is. Because the reality is you won't see it until you believe it. And you got to suspend disbelief and begin to take a good hard look at what's really going on here. And that's coming to you from somebody who spent 30 years or so, more of his life, totally disconnected. Because as one of our favorite people in the world says, I was religiously challenged, and so were many of you, as we've seen in some of the webinars we've had recently, and we've talked about some of this stuff. But our connection to the field of intention, to source, is corroded because we have something that separates us called ego. We sit up there with our ego and we say, hey, I can do this. I don't need no help. Hey, God, I got this. I got it. It's okay. Just hang out there. I'll take care of it. I can do it. And that's what gets us into trouble. And I'm going to put this up today, right now, and we're going to talk about it several times throughout the talk today. There is no way to happiness. If you say, I want to find happiness, it ain't out there. It's inside. Happiness is the way. It is the fundamental, foundational thing that if you can't find it between your ears, you're not going to get there. Wayne Dyer tells a story about an elderly woman who was being moved into a nursery home. Her husband of 70 years had just passed, and she was blind, and she was at the nursery home. And a worker was describing to her some aspects of her room that she was going to be moving into. And the woman said, oh, I love it. And the worker said, you haven't even seen it. And the woman said, and remember, this woman was blind too. The woman said, my happiness doesn't depend on the arrangement of the furniture. It depends on the arrangement of my mind. That's pretty powerful, because that's really where we have to begin. We have to get ourselves to a place where we are happy with what we have, where we are practicing gratitude for what we have. Because if we go to source, if we go to God with, hey, you only gave me $1 and I need 1,000, it doesn't work that way. So we've got to surround ourselves with the idea that we all are already connected to everything we need for everything in our life. And we have separated ourselves with our ego by believing we are something that we are not. Treasure your divinity. We are not here as human beings having a spiritual experience. We are here as spiritual beings having a human experience. And once again, we got to contemplate ourselves as surrounded by the conditions we want to produce. So what is it that you want in your life? What do you want to produce? Do you want to produce wealth? Do you want to produce, a new house, whatever? Contemplate yourself surrounded by the conditions you want to produce. Put yourself, we've talked about this in many different ways. We talk about be, do, have. We talk about living as if. We talk about living from the end. We say it in so many different ways, but we're always saying the same thing. Your ego isn't going to do it. You can't get there with your ego. It's your connection to source that's going to make it happen. In the Old Testament, the Torah, which was the first 5 books of the Old Testament, in Genesis, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And in line 31, it says, and all God created was good. Now, you all know me. You know I'm not a Bible-thumping preacher. But there's a message here that is so profound that it is not ignorable. All God created was good. God didn't create the universe and say, well, it's okay. I don't like Mars. I made these people, but hey, Tom down there, he's not so good. No, Sally's okay. But, Rick, not sure about him. And that Len guy, well, God made it. It's good. You are good. You are a creation of God. And the word God and good is synonymous. All God created was good. If it was good, it's God. If it's God, it's good. And to feel good is to be in touch with God. It's to connect to source. To feel bad is to lose that connection. So we can say, well, it's pretty gosh darn hard to feel good. Look at all the stuff going on in the world. My God, there's starving children in Africa, and the economy is going to crash, and ISIS is going to blow us up. And, here's the message. You feeling bad doesn't help anyone. You can't feel bad enough. You can't get hungry enough to feed anyone on earth. My mother used to tell me to eat my dinner because there were starving children in Africa. Somehow I offered to send them, my dinner to Africa. That didn't seem to help. And the message is, if I didn't eat my food, that didn't feed anybody in Africa. You can't get sick enough to make somebody healthy. There's no amount of feeling bad that's going to help someone who's unhealthy. The only way to help them is for you to feel good and go help. The same thing, you got to put your oxygen mask on first. You can't be poor enough to make somebody wealthy. You have an obligation. Each one of us has an obligation to do everything we can to make ourselves as wealthy, as healthy, and as good as possible, because that's the only way that we can reach out and help the people who need our help. So no amount of you feeling bad can help somebody else. The foundation for all of this is to learn to feel good about yourself, to learn to love yourself, and to learn to be happy with yourself. Feeling bad is creating resistance to connecting to source. Feeling bad creates emotion. When you feel bad, you have a physical reaction to it. And when you're physically reacting, there's that pit of your stomach that, oh my God, I can't pay the bills next week or something like that. That's creating resistance to connecting to source. Anytime you're not feeling good, you are attracting exactly the opposite of what you want into your life. Does that make sense? If you don't feel good, you are attracting exactly the opposite of what you want into your life. So use feeling bad as a trigger to ask, what am I doing to disconnect from source? If you feel bad, ask, how can I clean my connection to source? Because once you connect to source, you can get what you want. So, source knows nothing of feeling bad. It knows nothing of lack. God doesn't lack anything. The obstacles we have to creating what we want very often are the ways we perceive ourselves as disconnected from source. And once again, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too whatever it is. Every thought that you have that you can't do something is your resistance to connecting to source. Now, as we saw last week, and as we sort of reviewed very quickly here, we don't got no choice in this matter. This isn't an option. We are spiritual beings intended here by God. We were put here for a reason. And we might as well connect back up. We might as well clean this connection and figure out what it is we're supposed to do. So, what are the obstacles? Obstacle number one, ego. I can do this, God. I got it. I don't need your help. Hey, I'll talk to you next week. I saw you last Sunday. I'll be back next Sunday. It doesn't work that way. You got to stop being offended. If somebody says something to you, don't be offended. Just reflect it back, bounce it off. Don't worry about it. If somebody calls you stupid, it doesn't make you stupid. It makes them a person who has to stoop low and label other people. Don't react to it. Bounce it off. Don't look for occasions to be offended. Don't let yourself feel superior. Hey, I'm better than John over there. I can see, John's, oh God. Hey, Judy over there, she's got a blog that's pretty ugly. Mine looks a lot better. No. You don't need to be right. You don't need to win. And you don't need to be concerned about what the neighbors think. That's the first step in connecting to source. God doesn't sit up there and worry about what the neighbors think. Neither should you. So, ego. You got to learn to let the ego go and just simply get in touch with your higher self and know who you are. The energy of your life. Everything has energy. And you need to look at the energy in your life. The average house has very low energy. The average child has seen 12,000 simulated murders by the time he's 14. There's energy in the foods we eat. There's the arrangement of the furniture, feng shui, arranging the furniture in a good way. There's the people. Are the people in your lives bringing you down? Are they toxic people? Are they negative? And there may be some people that you can't do anything about because they're your relatives and they live with you, but there are some people that you can do something about if you are being dragged down by toxic people. If there's clutter in your life, all of the thought leaders tell us that one of the things we need to do is clean up clutter and make our lives neat and ordered, and etc. Clutter is a negative thing. It drags us down. The TV, as we all know, drags us down. Alcohol, drinking too much, is a low energy thing. So you can do things to improve the energy of your life, to bring yourself up. And finally, languaging. How do you talk to yourself? Don't spend time thinking about or talking about lack. Oh man, you don't understand how bad I've got it. I know you've got it bad, but boy, I've really got it bad. Let me tell you how bad it is for me. Do you understand that when you talk like that, you are continuing on giving yourself the same thing? You will never get out of it if you talk about how bad it is, if you justify it. You've heard this a million times. You got to think from the end. What do you want? You got to put yourself out there and ask yourself, what do you want? You got to see yourself as already connected with the things you want in your life. Source reacts to your belief in lack by fulfilling that belief. So if you think, well, I can never get ahead, you're right. If you think, well, I'll never have any money, you're right. You're going to get more of what you believe. Source is creating at all times, and it's going to keep giving you what it is you think you want. And if you think you want emptiness in your life, you're going to get it, because that's what you're saying. That's what you're putting out there. It doesn't know anything about shortages or lack. You can't go to it and say, gee, I don't have any money. It doesn't understand that. It gives you more of what you say you don't have. It just gives it to you. You're not asking it to give you money when you say, I don't have any money. You go to source and you thank it for everything you do have. You don't talk or share what's missing in your life. And the Bible tells us, the Old Testament tells us, as a man thinketh, so is he. So if you think about lack, you're going to get more lack. Okay. We are ready to start into the phases of intention. And there are 7 of these. I'm going to come off the screen share for just a moment. I'm going to stop the share and come off. And I'm going to assume that you can see me. We're ready to start down into the phases of intention, as I said. Somebody type in the chat, you can see me, hear me. And what I'm going to ask from you is, do you want to keep going today, or do you want to pick it up here next week? It's already 9 o'clock. and I clearly talk too much. But again, this stuff is deep. So if we keep going into the phases of intention, we probably have another, I'm going to say, a full half hour at least. Probably no more than that. So what do you, oh, I see Roseanne's on, thank you. So what do you folks want to do? Do you want to continue on for maybe another half hour this morning, or do you want to call it? And I'm going to assume yes means keep going, Christy. Let me have at least 2 or 3 other keep going, or let's cut it off and pick it up right here next week. I can see in here, it's good material, you teach it. Yeah, you can see in here. Do you want me to keep going? That's what I'm asking. I'll take yeses or nos, and I'll understand what that means. Yes means keep going. No means let's. I got to run. Let's cut it off and pick it up next week. So 1 or 2 people more respond. Mike, I'm going to interpret that as a yes. It's good material. You teach it well. Rick says next week. Okay, so we seem to be split. Come on, give me a couple more people. Let's get a vote here, and we'll see where we're at. If we do pick it up next week, I won't do as much of a review. We'll just jump right in and go. So, anybody else want to vote? Bob's good either way. All right. Okay. I'm up to keep going. I got you, Christy. Craig, Rick. Oh no, Rick said next week. Craig, we got another vote. Got to pick up more next week. Got to run into Ton. Okay, so I got 2 for next week and one for keep going. Christy, let me go ahead and we'll pick it up next week. Since I've got 2 saying to quit, and 2 saying to quit and 1 saying to go. So let's pick it up. And also, Chris wanted to be here, and so next week works best for me. Okay, that's it then. The vote is next week. So let's just call this. I'll do a really brief review next week, and then we'll really do the phases of intention next week. And this is going to be really, really, there's really powerful material in the next section. So I don't want to rush through it and feel like we just got to get through it really quick because people have to go. So let's pick it up next week. Sorry it ran longer than I thought, but there's a lot here, and it's pretty deep. So bye for now, and you folks have a wonderful weekend. And for those of you who normally join me, I'll see you on Lunch with Len on Tuesday. And I do not have a special guest Tuesday, but what I am going to do is review the last 2 or 3 Lunches with Lens we've had and summarize what we've learned from the people that came. And people like Jolena told us what she's doing and how she's making progress. So we're going to review some of that stuff, and it'll be a summary session. So I'll see you folks on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for coming today. Sorry I ran late. It's the way it is. Bye for now.